Hey YouTube, welcome to my channel. If you don't know me, I'm Kianna Alexander. I write romance and women's fiction. I have 30 something books out. 35 or 36 sounds right. Um, Starring characters of color. So I want to start this off by doing a romance author FAQs. I get a lot of questions when I go to speak, when I do book signings, um, reader conferences and things like that. And I get the same questions a lot. So what I decided to do was go ahead and just make a list of the questions I frequently get asked and try to answer some of those questions for you. People really don't know a lot about the publishing industry at large. There's a lot of mystery surrounding how you get a book published and all of that. And when it comes down to romance, there's even more mystery. How does that even work? So people have questions. So hopefully I can answer some of the questions. So listen in to see if maybe one of the questions I'm going to answer today will be a question that you have. The first question I get asked a lot is, what inspires you to write, or where do you get your ideas? That's basically two versions of the same question. I really don't know. Some ideas just kind of come to me in dreams or just kind of come to me fully formed in my head. Sometimes I hear characters speaking to each other before I even know their names. But when I do get inspiration and I'm able to pinpoint the source, a lot of times it comes from a song. So music is definitely a big inspiration for me. A lot of times it also comes from TV or films or something like that. Some other form of media that I've consumed has kind of got me thinking. Like if I see a story somewhere, I might think, oh, well, what if it went this way instead? So my brain kind of remixes the things that I hear and see and kind of, I guess generate story ideas from that. So that's what inspires me or where I get my ideas from. Another question I get asked pretty often is, how long does it take you to write a book? That all depends. Um, I write novellas, I write full length books, occasionally a short story. So it really depends on how long the finished book is supposed to be. In general, the longer the finished book is supposed to be, the longer it's going to take me to write it. I can do like a short story in 3 days to a week. That's less than 5,000 words, all the way up to a full length novel. I've not really written anything longer than about 85,000, and that could take me several months, 3 or 4 months. I think is about a good estimate. So somewhere between the 3 days to a week and the 3 or 4 months is about how long it takes me to write a book. Like I said, it all depends on how long the book is supposed to be when it's finished. And, that depends on whether or not I'm self-publishing or it's for a publishing house, but we'll get into that eventually. How did you get started writing? I get that question a lot as well. I think I've always been a writer. I remember like from the first time that I knew how to write, I wrote stories. I just made up stories. It was just the way I kept myself entertained as a kid. Um, I loved to read. I read voraciously. I would go to the library once a week and bring home 15 books and read all those books in a week and go back the next week for 15 more. And eventually I realized I wanted to tell the stories instead of just reading them. But I really didn't get started until in the early 2000s. My husband was training in Virginia. He's in the military. And I stayed with a cousin of mine. He had a little health scare. And I was in North Carolina, but they wanted me to be closer to him in case something else should happen. So the unit asked me to come and be close by. And I had a cousin that lived in the city adjacent to the base where he was training. So I went and stayed with her, and I stayed with her for about 4 months. During the time I stayed with her, I was pretty much at her house by myself all day. She was working. She had 2 kids in middle and high school, and I pretty much had the house to myself all day except for the dog. So I asked her if I could use her computer. She said yes. So I used her computer, started working on a story. I remember one day I finished the first chapter. She came home from work, and I said, hey, Tanya, I wrote this thing. I want you to read it. So I gave it to her, let her read it. She went in her room, closed the door, read it. And I was just kind of pacing the floor, wondering what she was going to say. She came out a few minutes later and was like, oh my God, this is so good, you have to finish. So that's how all that got started. And she kind of threatened me that if I didn't have a chapter every day when she came home from work, that she wasn't going to let me eat. And she locked her deep freezer and took her keys with her to work. So she was not playing. But thank God she was so insistent that I finish. That book ended up being my first published book. It took years about 5 years from the time I finished it to the time I got it published, of just trying to figure out how to do it. But that was the catalyst. Her forcing me to finish was the catalyst. And, unfortunately, Tanya passed away several years ago, but she lived to see that project come to fruition and to see that the book was dedicated to her. So, that was my cousin. May she rest in peace. What she gave me, the time and space to write, was priceless. So that's how I got started in publishing. What's a typical writing day like for you? I get that question a lot too. What's a typical day? Seriously, what's a typical day? I don't know what that is. I have kids. I have kids. There's no such thing in my household as a typical day. Every time I think I'm going to have a typical day, something happens with the kids or with my husband, or something comes up and things are not the way I set out for them to be. So we just kind of go with the flow. But ideally, I like to get anywhere between 3 and 5 hours of writing time during the day. The writing time itself is less important to me than word count. I like to get a minimum of 1,000 words a day. When I'm on deadline, I got to get more words than that. But I like to try to get at least 1,000 words a day. And I just fit it in. Sometimes I have to put it in between this appointment, that appointment, people coming by the house to fix stuff, take the car to the shop, get an oil change, and sit in the lobby of the mechanic shop and write on my laptop. Sometimes it's what I have to do. So I don't really have a typical day or routine per se. But I try to get in several hours of writing and at least 1,000 words. So those are the first 5 questions out of the stack of questions that I get asked when I go places and people email me or come to my Facebook and message me. Those are the 5 commonly asked questions that I'm starting with. I will be talking forever if I decided to put all these questions in one video. So this is part 1. And then I'm going to come back later this week with part 2 for more frequently asked questions for romance writers. So if you want to hear about that, you definitely got to come back at the next upload. I upload on Wednesdays and Saturdays. If you want to see what I'm talking about, you gotta subscribe. So hit that subscribe button and remember to ring that notification bell so that you'll know exactly when I put up a video and you won't miss anything. So next we're gonna have part 2 where I'm gonna go into more questions that I get asked, the next 5 questions, and give you the answers and hopefully reveal some things about myself and kind of break through that mystery of what it's like to be a writer. So thanks for watching, y'all. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll know when the next video goes live.